Imagine walking through a city park in the early 1900s. The air is filled with the sounds of a bustling metropolis. You turn a corner, and there it is, a spectacle that millions of people would pay to see. A village, built to look primitive and exotic. Inside, not animals but people. Men, women and children from faraway lands, living their lives in front of a live audience. This is not fiction. This is the documented, indisputable history of human zoos. For over a century, these exhibitions were a celebrated form of entertainment and education. They were found at the World's Fairs in Paris and St. Louis, in the public zoos of New York and Brussels. But this wasn't just a spectacle. It was a deeply violent act of dehumanization. These exhibitions were a powerful tool for colonial empires, a form of public propaganda that cemented racist ideologies and justified conquest. This is a journey into a history that was deliberately forgotten, and a truth that we must now confront head-on. The seeds of the human zoo were sown in the intellectual and political climate of the 19th century. As European powers carved up Africa and Asia, they needed to justify their actions to their own people. The answer was found in pseudo-scientific theories of racial hierarchy. Prominent thinkers of the day used flawed, pseudo-scientific theories to prove that non-European peoples were less evolved, a lower form of humanity. Human zoos were the ultimate physical manifestation of this theory. They were presented as educational exhibits, a live-action textbook on racial superiority. The shows were the brainchild of men like Karl Hagenbeck, a German animal trader and showman, who discovered that showcasing exotic people was more profitable than his circus. He would bring groups of people, Sami from the Arctic, Nubians from Egypt, and display them in natural settings. These exhibitions became a template, a horrifying model that spread across the Western world. The human zoo reached its peak at the Great World's Fairs, monumental events that were meant to showcase the pinnacle of human progress. Yet right alongside the latest inventions and architectural wonders were exhibits of profound inhumanity. At the 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition in St. Louis, the Philippine Exposition was a massive and controversial attraction. Over 1,000 Filipinos representing various ethnic groups were exhibited in a vast, sprawling complex. It was a clear message to the public. America's colonial subjects were in need of its paternalistic guidance. But the most gut-wrenching story is one that has become the haunting face of this entire history. Otabenga, a young man from the Mbuti people of the Congo. Otabenga was brought to the United States for the St. Louis Fair. His life took an even more tragic turn in 1906 when he was exhibited at the Bronx Zoo. He was not just in a village exhibit, he was placed in the primate house. His cage shared with an orangutan. A sign over his enclosure described him as an African pygmy and a member of the evolutionary link between apes and humans. His story, widely reported by newspapers at the time, is an indelible scar on the American conscience and a powerful testament to the utter inhumanity of these exhibitions. What did the people on display experience? The accounts are scattered, but they tell a consistent story of profound humiliation. Many were coerced or tricked into leaving their homes, promised a life of wealth that never materialized. They were paraded around, forced to act out simplified, often fabricated rituals. They had to endure the constant, unblinking stares of thousands of people. The crowds were not just curious, their gaze was one of racial superiority. They gawked, they mocked, they threw food and coin. For the people in the exhibits, this was not a temporary job or a cultural exchange. It was an act of complete subjugation. Their individuality was erased, their culture reduced to a caricature. They were made to feel like objects, not human beings. This systematic stripping of dignity was a trauma that lasted a lifetime for those who survived it, and a legacy of shame for the societies that participated in it. The phenomenon was truly global. From the Jardin d'Acclimatation in Paris to the public parks of Germany, the human zoo became a staple of Western entertainment. These exhibitions didn't just stay in one city. They traveled, touring the continent and cementing these racist stereotypes in the minds of a generation. The constant reinforcement of these images, of the savage, the primitive, and the uncivilized had a profound and lasting effect. This isn't just about a historical curiosity. The images and narratives from these human zoos laid the groundwork for decades of racist policy and discrimination. They created the visual vocabulary for prejudice. When you see a racist cartoon or hear a stereotype, you are often seeing a direct descendant of the ideas and spectacles that were popularized in these exhibitions. The human zoo was a public education in racism, and it was a class that was very well attended. As the world entered the 20th century, the ideology behind human zoos began to crack. The horrors of World War I and the rise of more modern scientific thought made scientific racism increasingly difficult to defend. The exhibitions became less common, but they did not disappear entirely. The last documented human zoo took place at the 1958 Brussels World's Fair, an event meant to usher in a new era of global unity. A Congolese village was a major attraction. The people were put on display in an enclosure, separated from the crowd by a fence. Photos and eyewitness accounts describe visitors throwing coins and bananas to the people, treating them exactly as if they were animals in a zoo. The exhibition was shut down prematurely due to a combination of public outcry and the refusal of some of the Congolese participants to continue in the degrading display. This final, deeply shocking event stands as a stark reminder that the acceptance of this prejudice wasn't an ancient evil, but a modern one. Confronting this history is not about assigning blame, but about understanding our shared past. It's about remembering the people who were put on display, their dignity stolen for a moment's entertainment. It's about recognizing the insidious power of propaganda, and how easily we can be convinced to dehumanize one another. Today, there is an ongoing and vital conversation about this history. Historians are documenting the truth, and the descendants of those who were displayed are finally having their stories heard. We must acknowledge this dark chapter for what it was: a brutal, systematic campaign to exploit and demean. The human zoo stands as a powerful cautionary tale, a lesson in how easily we can be convinced to see another person not as an equal, but as an object of curiosity. By facing this uncomfortable truth, we can begin the work of healing, and ensure that such a horrifying spectacle is never again accepted as entertainment.